Next up, we have Kost with the art of dumping databases. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for coming and listening to my talk. I'm Vlatko Košturiak, coming from Croatia. You can find me on Twitter. It's actually this nickname. This one is 0, if you want to send me messages or whatever. And let's start. So, in short, I will tell you a bit about introduction and system administrator perspective, and of course we will move over to the core, to the attacker perspective, and how we actually do the data dumping and what's the problems with it and how we can actually help it. I just made one tool which actually helps it, so I'll just briefly describe how it helps with everyday task of penetration tester, right? And I hope we will have some time for questions and answers. So I think I will not take more than 45 minutes with all of these. Well, depending on your questions, right? So, who am I? I'm a security consultant working like offensive penetration tester, red teaming, and that stuff. Actually, here they say read. Sorry, it's red teaming, right? And it's actually, I'm doing a lot of different testings and so on. I also contributed different code to different projects, and I also made my own ones. One of the most popular I see is DVCS Reaper, which actually rips the code from DVCS, is exposed on the web servers. So let's say one everyday job of pen tester is actually, well, compromising everything, right? And it's every week or every different week or month or whatever, you have like experience with customer, right? So you really like compromise everything, like you gain domain admin root on different machines and so on, and even like database administrator credentials, right? And then you said, okay, I think I have everything. I think I can actually dump, right, everything, what I need, like data from databases and so on, what is valuable. And then, yeah, they say, oh no, dump will be seen because we have really good database monitoring, like we have logs, sensor alerts, database firewalls, data loss prevention, blah, 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 and all this stuff, right? So you say, okay, challenge accepted. We'll try to dump the data, and let's see what will happen, right? And now, actually you come to, okay, how I will dump the database. Okay, I have credentials, I have everything, right? So let's see what sysadmin tools we have, right? Of course, sysadmin tools actually rely on something which is like, you don't want to lose data, right? Data consistency. You have a nice maintenance window where you can actually do the dump, lock everything, database, and so on. And you actually worry about scaling of database, database backup, have regular incremental backups, full backups, whatever, right? And all of this for actual purpose of backup migration or synchronizing with other databases or whatever, right? So yeah, it's different tools in mind, right? So yeah, probably that I just don't talk about. In theory, you have like probably used some of these databases, right? Database tools where you actually like dump whole database, right? Or like MySQL, Postgres dump, or whatever other database you use, right? So the problem with actually with this sysadmin standard actually tools is that they are noisy, right? You have like table locking, data like row locking or whatever, how database dumping is implemented actually in that binary. So, well, you still have like data consistency and it's very fast. It's really visible on any monitoring the customer have, right? Or victim, right? So that means you will see like massive database activity, which is very noticeable in logs, or in some kind of monitoring tools, like whatever you have, graphing of those load of database or load of I/O activity, like disk activity or network activity, and so on, right? So this is fine for administrator because he knows he's doing. But if you're doing it stealthy, that means you will be seen in logs and probably you will be blocked, or maybe they will just see it somebody dumped, so they will proceed with investigation, right? So this is not something that normal attacker will do, right? So that means that even database have some kind of options to actually log if you have performance problems. So even if you, for example, dump it in, if you dump it in like some time where user can notice, they can actually see it that database performance is bad, or like they have slower responses, or it doesn't work at all because everything is locked, right? Or sometimes when they are adding some queries, right, while you're dumping the database. So yeah, even some databases have something like to log slow queries, like MySQL, so on. So you have different like ways that something can be noticed. And even like if they have implemented, which is of course good, like database firewall, they will like detect dumps if you have like dumping more than 100 rows, and it's not normal that you dump more than 100 rows from applications or whatever user or any way how you get the credentials is working, right? So this is really good tools which you can really use for dumping, but it's very noisy and problematic, right? So just to make it straight, I'm just ignoring now the facts that you need to do recon, vulnerability identification, exploitation, you've done lateral movement, you come to the database, and now you want to dump it, right? So I'm just talking about that post-exploitation part, not how to get those DBA credentials. So we assume that I already have like obtained like database credentials, username, passwords, whatever its credentials is used for connecting to database, and it's working, right? So if I'm an attacker, I actually don't care so much about data consistency, right? So I don't have to lock actual database, and if some query like row is added, I don't care if I have like thousands of username and passwords. I don't care if I will just miss one, right? I can just dump again or whatever. And actually, it doesn't have to happen. It's good. But it doesn't have to happen immediately, right? I can wait for some time and get all the data I want. So from the attacker's perspective, what I really want is actually to be stealthy, right? So that means don't do dump immediately, just divide it in chunks. Just do some like delay random time, it cannot be detected, right? If you have normal spikes, every 5 seconds, it's very noticeable, right? Normal spikes. And if there's any exfiltration options, it will be much more useful, because then I will bypass like data loss prevention devices, software or solutions, whatever, right? And I don't want to write more code for any other new way, so I just want to be extendable, right? This is something from attacker perspective which you want. So usually when I was doing it for quite some time, is actually you statically compile all those clients, like MySQL client, like Postgres client, so on, and then you do those dumpings or whatever. You just do like net pipes around like pivot to write database port. But it's pain, right? And especially if they have some kind of client level vulnerabilities, your client will be vulnerable, so you don't want to expose it, right? So the other way is actually you can actually write that script, which will actually do the like divide it in chunks, blah blah, write in Python or whatever. The problem is usually you have dependency problems, so you have to upload those things there if you can, of course, or you have to somehow pipe it to your like pivot point, and then you can actually connect to the database and so on. So usually it's like, for me, it doesn't scale, right? Write each script for every case and so on. So I just wanted to optimize it and do like, don't waste too much time on this dumping because it's just waste of time in writing each script, right? So I decided I want to actually write something which will actually have some, I can reuse it in every project. So I said, okay, I will use Go, right? Anybody was here last time when Virus talked about Go language? Okay, so there is. So probably you know that its advantages, right? It's multi-platform and you can actually make statically linked binaries. So you can actually have just single exe or a single executable, which you can actually use for connecting to different databases. And you have like single binary and you don't have to bother with dependencies and so on. And the other thing is frequent change to core. What that means? That means that signature is always different, right? That actually means bypassing on most of the antiviruses if they have like signature technology, right? So if you don't know about too much about Golang and from an offensive perspective, I will advise to look at the Virus talk and to go more deeper why Go is good, especially for offensive things. Hopefully Virus will come next year, so we'll have his wonderful Go Jutsu scene next year as well here. So other things which is good with Go is actually you have already made SQL drivers for most databases, right? And you can actually, you don't have to wait on these things, rewriting things, but you can just focus on those which are problematic. Of course, so if I want to make it more like working on every platform, so I can just have different executables for different platforms, I can actually just use Go and then reuse it on everywhere. So that's why I searched the internet for something like this, like having one single executable client for every different database I know. I didn't find it, with especially exfiltration and data found, so I made it. So you can actually just uploaded the version and released it now. You can look at GitHub, it's SQL-C, which is actually a universal SQL client with some kind of exfiltration features I will show you, how it will help, right? So it's open source and you can use it just right now. You have like different options, right? You can just use it. If you're a system administrator, you can just imagine it's like single binary client which you can like do different queries like select and so on. So that means you can actually, whatever like Go supports, you can actually have all these compiled in and then you can use different databases. And you can have like console, like what every other like SQL client have, like you can type SQL queries and get the responses. And of course you can dump the database. The difference is actually you have like stealth usage. What that means? That means that you can actually dump the database without locking. It's wonderful, these notifications, right? And that means that you can actually make a delay between queries, so it's not so visible, right? This is just a basic stealth usage where you actually limit number of rows, how much you will get, and then you can put some kind of delay between and so on. That's basic stuff, right? Just that it's not so noticeable as normal dump query. The other thing is this one is actually visible how? This one is visible if you're looking at the spikes. It's visible because every 5 seconds you have spike getting data, right? So it's visible. So what you don't want to have like this at regular intervals, you actually need to add jitter, right? What it is basically that you are getting data at random intervals, at random number of rows you are getting returned. So you say, okay, I will just want to have like minimal rows like 3 and 10, and it will pick random number every time, like 5, 6, whatever here, right? And it will automatically. You actually just type SQL query, whatever, like select star from users, and you have like 1,000 records. It will, in the console, it will automatically do the dumping, but it will follow this order. So that means it will not dump everything immediately, but it will dump chunk by chunk, right? And if you add more delay, right? So even you have jitter in delay. So that means that you have random delay in time. So on the graph, it's hard to actually see any like regular intervals or whatever. It's just adding jitter, right? So this is much more useful once you're dumping, right? The other things, of course, you can execute command for each row or each column of the database. That means that you can actually like change IP address and MAC address of once you're dumping, and then do the dump, and then again change, and so on. So it's much more like you cannot just identify one IP or whatever. As you can see, there is another like interesting fact here. Anybody sees? In hex, it's like for Travis, because he's not here, it's Ceca and Goga, right? Written inside. So we miss him here too as well. So just as an example, right? And so you can actually change MAC address or whatever, and then just do the dumping, right? Or you can do something like this. You can actually, it's not visible here, but actually what you can do is run any command. This one, for example, changes like SSID, and by looking at the SSIDs, you can actually get the dump, right? So each time this one, it will be replaced with base 64 of data in the column. So that means it will not connect to the wireless database. It will just put the SSID of that machine to some other. So you can actually see it, right? Let me just show you how it actually looks, right? So you can see here, you can put something like to recognize it, how it looks like, and then you can even come with the phone and just get the dumps, right? So, for example, you can say, okay, give me every row, put new SSID every row. So this will actually skip the data loss prevention, right? Because it will not go over the network, it will not connect anywhere. You will just, for example, see at random intervals wireless access point, right? So no network activity, just radio sending random SSIDs, right? With the SQL C. Anybody knows what this one, base 64, is? It's admin, right? Just to have a... Oh, thank you. So as you can see, there's different options. It's extendable, so whatever you want. I think you listened to the Nemanja talk, so he talked more about exfiltration. So you can, for example, use and say, okay, just exfiltrate via lights of scroll lock, num lock, whatever, right? So you can use whatever comes to your mind to actually exfiltrate it. And you can actually do like poor man DNS exfiltration. That means that you can actually just say, oh, sorry, this one is not host name. I'll just do it live, right? So this one will actually send over DNS, right? If this is the like domain I'm controlling, I will actually ask each time for different part from the database about this one. Of course, I can do the other ways as well, but this is one of the poor man like DNS exfiltration. And of course, if you can just put like, okay, I will just listen for the DNS traffic on that end and just getting, oh, this is perfect. And as you can see, it will every time you will get like it dumps any data, you will get it. Like base64 encoded, and you can just decode it, and that's it, right? So yeah, different options. Whatever you come up with mind, you can actually do it, right? And this is not just limited to Linux. You can do it in Windows with Windows commands, right? Whatever you can come up with any Windows command which can do some kind of exfiltration like NSLOOKUP or whatever. So yeah, next question is, PowerShell. I want to have something like invoke dbdump. I was thinking about it and implementing in PowerShell. The problem is it's not supportable, right? I don't know anyway how I can do it on Linux. Of course, there is PowerShell on Linux, but that means that the system you're attacking actually must have PowerShell. So it's not so easy. With this one, I can actually do the upload statically linked binary and have there everything, or on my client or on client or whatever, right? So yeah, it's not in memory by default. That means that you have to cope how you can actually load this executable in memory yourself, right? But if you don't want to have any traces, yeah, you don't have to. It's advisable to actually don't touch disks, right? And this is something you have to find how you can do it yourself if you're uploading to some kind of victim, right? If you're doing from your machine and just doing dumping, right, of course you don't need this kind of feature, right? The problem is also with PowerShell is actually database drivers. I didn't see too much that you can actually just do like different like PowerShell implementations of connecting to different databases. But if you make it in PowerShell, of course, I will take advantage of it and use it. In short. So another question which I got is actually, but there is SQL map, right? SQL Ninja or whatever. Why write something new? Well, the problem is the difference between this one and for example, SQL map or whatever, SQL Ninja, whatever, is that this one doesn't care. Oh, it's wonderful. Nick followed me. I'm so happy. So it's like SQL map is actually doing for exploitation in application. This one assumes you already have connection some kind to the database. So it's not for exploiting applications. And, it's wonderful. And of course, the problem is some of them doesn't have. For example, SQL map already have. You can directly connect to the database. The problem is dependency problem, right? The problem is actually you need to have Python. You cannot use some kind of Python to executable, blah, 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 and so on, but you have really large package and so on, so usually it doesn't scale so much for me. So yeah, in short, this one is not for exploiting the SQL injection. It's actually once you have straight connection to the database, so that's the difference. And it is optimized for any like silent and stealthy dumping you might need. So, what about the future? Well, I want to make some kind of level client-side code, so you don't have to like TCP dump. You can just say, okay, just give me all the queries you have, and immediately recognize everything, columns, databases, and so on. So you don't have to do it on the client side. I mean, on the attacker side, right? And all that stuff, just to have everything on the other side, not just on the side of dumping. There is support for Oracle in Golang. The problem is it's so much pain to actually do it, so I just kept it in this release. And it has support for all different databases, other like DB2 or whatever enterprise might have. The problem is they actually need proprietary libraries, and it then depends on external libraries, and then you must upload much more than single executable. So I'm still looking for any like pure Go implementation of Oracle protocol, so that will help actually to have one single executable. So yeah, it doesn't support like multiple queries, so this is something I would like to implement in the future. And another thing which is on my list, and it's partly supported now inside, is that you can actually do like TLF database. What that means? That means that you can actually put it there, and it will dump all the queries, all the, oh, Yelena, thank you. You can actually dump everything what you have inside, like inside database, but the difference is that it's like tailf for databases. So if any new query comes to the database, it will automatically dump you when it's available. So it will just pull the database for any new row if it's up there, right? So it will silently be there and dump in any interval you specify. So if you want to help, please join. You have now on the GitHub. Send me pull request. I'll be happy to accept it. I'm open to any feature you might have or you need. I can even, if you have a good idea, I will implement it myself if I have time, of course. Or I see I will need it in the future, of course. So, yeah, for me, writing scripts for each engagement, yeah, for me it doesn't scale. So I have to like be much more productive, right? If you have every other week any other engagement and so on, and you have dependency problems. So yeah, for this one, you need to have database connectivity. And I really like that you have like single static binary where you can just move it and have all the client for all those databases I need, right? So yeah, you can actually see it on GitHub. It's available. It's here, and here you have like a list of database drivers which can be implemented very. What they actually consist, you just actually add to the source whatever database you need, and then you actually compile it with this support. The other thing which you might need if you need to dump different databases, you need to know query how to list all tables in database to actually support it completely for dumping, right? So you can implement other possibilities, other databases. For me, those databases so far were enough. Yeah, I would like to thank Virus for actually making his goal addiction to me, and organizer for actually having me here, and thank you for listening. Do you have any questions? Any questions or, yeah, we have here.
The syntax that you use for SQL is universal, or you need to write queries specifically like this is MS SQL, so I will use, I don't know, limit or top.
Okay.
You
know. For parts which, the question was actually, are you using any like database specific queries, right?
Yes,
so
if you have to, or you can use something that's on top.
What I'm actually trying to use is most closest to the ANSI SQL, but the problem is listing listing tables. I just haven't seen any like for having one single query to actually support everything. So I'm just implementing for each database driver different SQL query to actually ask for it, right? But if you have any, I'm happy to implement it.
Well, it's not backward compatible. I've tried to implement something similar, actually the tailf feature, and my MS SQL 2003 doesn't support that query that you need, and you know that companies have that.
Yeah, that's the limitations I'm having from the Golang and from the database. So.
So that's not solved.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Sorry, but but if you come up with any interesting way how to actually do it flexible, I'm really open to pull requests or any idea, I will implement it. Yeah.
Any more questions? All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. If you will have any questions later, you can find me here. I will be for some short time here. Or if you have any questions, feel free to actually send me Twitter. As you can see, I'm very active and people around me. So please do contact me and maybe we can exchange ideas or how we can actually make it better. Thanks.